Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Grizzly Bear Sims YouTube channel and welcome back to Midtown USA. Just as promised, this is episode number 28 and we are well underway on harvesting the final field, the final soybean crop for Midtown USA for this series. It is game day number 7, late autumn. This is the game day after the game day that we were together last. And let me just clear these HUDs really quick because I'm going to get a screenshot like this. I think I've changed the method of handling the emptying the combine and everything just a little bit. I've gone back to, well, I guess in episode number 27, I sort of talked about the scenarios that I sort of like to use. And of course, if you're new to my channel, you know, I haven't really done a whole lot of course play work in the episode or the series before this, because I had done Thornton Farm, for example, and I talked a little bit about this in the last episode, that sometimes depending on the map, depending on the size of the fields and everything, I may opt to kind of do the poor man's approach and drive the combine and just park a tractor and a tipper on the side of the field and either drive the tractor and tipper to the combine or drive the combine to the tractor and tipper. It just kind of depends on how I feel and what I feel like doing and everything. But for maps where we have a little bit larger fields and everything, I will sort of enlist the assistance of Courseplay to help with this. And this process that I'm going through here is more or less the option A. You know, it's the easiest method to set up. It includes the fewest moving parts with just a combine and a tractor and a tipper, and the tractor and tipper has a course from this field here over to the silo to empty, and that's what they will do. So let me just clean up the screens here just a little bit. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. You're watching this episode on the 20th of April, and I am recording this episode still on the 31st of March. So I am 3 weeks ahead of schedule with my video releases, and if I can, fingers crossed, if I can keep, maybe not quite 3 weeks, but if I can keep a happy medium somewhere between 2 weeks and 3 weeks, somewhere in that time frame, then I'm going to be set for not only for some travel that I've got coming up in June, and you know, June will be here before we know it, because obviously I'm recording an episode that you guys are going to watch on the 20th of April. So even though I am more or less, let me get the header raised up, even though I am more or less still in the month of March, this being the very last day of March, and again, I almost said game day again, but even though I am in the very last day of March, and you guys are watching this episode in April, and I'm already thinking about April. So I do have a trip that is coming up, again, like I said, in June, and it's going to be another one of those week-long things where I'll probably fly out on Sunday evening and come back on either Thursday evening or Friday, something like that. I'm not sure how long I'll be out in Florida. But anyway, I am just trying to keep a consistent schedule, and we're going to be in the process here in, you know, the next, probably the next episode, 29 or 30, will be wrapping this series up. So maybe, fingers crossed, I can be patient enough with myself to say, okay, let's make this an even 30 episodes. Let's put an episode 29 in, do something after we do this. Obviously, it'll be probably selling some crops. And speaking of crops, so just to kind of bring you up to speed here, we managed to harvest 221,114 liters of soybeans off the field, the 2 fields that we did in the previous episode. Of course, that was, I'll bring up the big map here so that we're a little bit more educated here when we're talking about this. Of course, I'm talking about fields number 16 and field number 17. We produced that amount of soybeans, so that was a good crop. This is more or less just icing on the cake, if you will. We had committed to 200,000 liters of soybeans that we needed to be able to produce for our buyer. And so, as I've pointed out, we're well ahead of that. Everything that is that's going to be coming off this field, in addition to the other 20 some odd thousand that's in the silo, will just again be icing on the cake. They will take it. They will pay us the negotiated price, and we will be happy for it. And all is good. So yeah, again, we've got a very simple approach to things here. We've just got our New Holland tractor pulling our favorite DB50 Penta DB50 tipper trailer and helping empty the John Deere combine here. So everything is working like clockwork. Now, I ran into a few problems when I tried establishing a course from the mother bin to the main silo, and unfortunately it still did that weird thing where the truck and the tipper trailer would not stop where it was supposed to stop. So I just really don't understand what is causing the issue with courseplay on this map. Again, I will say for the record, I am running a version of the map that was pre-release. It is completely my choice and has been my choice from more or less the get-go of starting this series, not to basically stop and update my version of the map to be the version that is basically available for each and every one of you all. So we do know that many of the issues that I have excuse me, we do know that many of the issues which I have pointed out over the course of these 28 episodes have all been addressed in the official released version of MidTown USA. So if you're playing this and obviously you have the official released version, you're not seeing these problems. So I'm just kind of putting up with them simply because, again, I didn't want to run the risk of applying the updated version of MidTown USA and causing problems with that current game save, because it can, and I also didn't want to have to take the time to either start over. I didn't think that was fair, and I didn't really have the time back when all of this was kind of being discussed, when the new version was coming out and everything. I didn't have the time at that particular time to actually start over and do all the work off camera to bring us up to where we needed to be and all that kind of stuff. So it's just basically a long way of me saying that essentially I didn't want to put you guys through the ordeal of starting the map over, and I didn't want to go through the trouble of having to do all the off-camera work, because at that time, again, I just didn't have the time to do that. That would have been a pretty major setback. And you know, it's one of the things that I suppose it's just one of the it's one of the challenges. That's the word I'm kind of looking for. It's one of the challenges, opportunities, or whatever, in getting the access to play a pre-release version of a map. It's so exciting to be able to do that, and I know that if everything works as it's supposed to, in other words, if the map gets released within a timely manner, I know that you guys, my viewers, the audience, don't mind that. I think there's some excitement to see things that are coming on the horizon. Obviously, if the releases are delayed, then you guys are kind of chomping at the bit to get access to something. And of course, those of us that have the opportunity to play these pre-released maps, it's not within our control. And I know that you all understand that you know, there's a lot of variables, there's a lot of moving parts, especially if the map is going to be subject to being made available on the Giants Mod Hub. There are, you know, certifications and tests and everything that Giants obviously puts into the map. Same with even like with FSUK, PCSG. Many of these sites will get back over there to my V key. Many of these sites will do their due diligence to ensure that the map is up to snuff and everything, and of course that is just that's good for everybody. It's good for the map, the map maker, map author, and everything, because it's sort of, especially if someone may be new to map modding, map developing, they can obviously get some assistance and everything that way. But B, it's especially important and good for us, the gamers, the folks that are on the receiving end of having access to this. And I've talked about this before, and I won't go much into this since we've already talked about it in the past, but that is one of the reasons why I do tend to get most of my mods from the Giants Mod Hub. It's very similar to my decision to get most of my ATS and ETS2 mods from the Steam Workshop, because again, there are levels of checks and balances and everything that these things go through, and it's just been my experience that these types of mods that do come from Giants Mod Hub, for the most part, are a little more reliable. They're a little more dependable. They tend to function the way that they're supposed to function. Yeah, there could still be some aesthetic kind of things, some visual things here and there of a tree that may not, that may appear to be floating in the air just a little bit or something like that. But for the most part, there's a good check and balance process before Giants decides to say, okay, this map is or this mod is ready for prime time for the use of the general population or whatever. So it looks like our New Holland tractor, our T8 over there, and our Penta DB50 just got back from dumping a load into our silo at our farm. So as you possibly noticed when I pulled up the menu, and I won't do that right now, but well, let's go ahead and do that. We've got a pretty good amount of grain stored. We've got 442,000 liters of wheat, 183 liters of barley, nothing in the canola soybeans. We've sold those previous 268,000 plus on soybeans, and 164,000 liters of corn. So most likely episode number 29, or at least a portion or maybe all of that episode, will probably be centered around us selling, us transporting our grain to our buyers that want our wheat, our barley, our corn, and of course our soybeans. And I don't know, I mean, let's see, let's bring this back up again. 268,000, I'm thinking that we could go over 300,000 liters of soybeans. I think that's not going to be too difficult to try to get to. We're just about halfway through on this field, maybe a little more than halfway, so maybe not quite 300,000 liters. I don't know. It's hard to judge these things. As I've often talked about before, these different grains and everything, the capacities, well, it's not, the capacities are the same. The combines hold the same amount of material, but for example, the yield, the amount of soybeans that, or the physical amount of material, of grain or whatever that we get from a soybean harvest is going to be completely different from wheat, for example. Planting these three fields in wheat, I think the yield would be much higher, or maybe it's similar to soybean. I don't know. I do know that there is obviously a lot less material, a lot less grain comparing canola, for example, to wheat. And I've confused myself, and I'm sure I've confused you. I think you understand what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say, anyways. And so yeah. So looking spring is in the air. Obviously, spring has been in the air for just a little while. We officially have been in the spring season for us here in the northern hemisphere, and I'm talking about the real world, obviously, for some time. The seasonal allergies are, well, I'm struggling. I've got to say that. I'm going to try my best to just make sure that I'm not sniffling and sneezing and stuff like that in my microphone, in the videos and everything. It's just tough. I'm struggling. I'm taking a couple of 2 different over-the-counter medications, Claritin and Xyzal, and having pretty good success with them. I alternate them just simply because I kind of think, and I'm not a doctor and I didn't stay on a Holiday Inn Express last night, so in other words, I'm trying to say I'm not qualified to make these kind of judgments or even the dialogue that I'm gonna say. But I think that from what sort of how I feel when I mix these two drugs alternately, take Claritin like 1 week on Claritin, and then I go on to Xyzal. I think that if I stick with just one, that tends to lose its effectiveness or whatever over a period of time. Like, for example, I don't think I can take just Claritin by itself and get the same amount of relief that I do if I take Claritin for a week or two, and then I stop taking it and I switch over to something else. And so thankfully though, I only really have to take the over-the-counter allergy medication in the spring and very early summer months. Typically by the time we get into midsummer, late summer time frame, everything that has kind of blossomed and bloomed and resulted in causing the seasonal allergies and everything for me tends to tends to go away. I do have some stuff in the fall that occurs normally. Now, of course, the thing is seasonal allergies. I had allergies in Texas really bad, and so I just took over the counter kind of stuff and just put up with it. When I moved to Colorado, I lived here for probably 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5 years, before I really had a problem with allergies. And I think it's just simply because I think when you change climates and such, I think your body, whatever I was allergic to, whatever was causing me problems in Texas, obviously I didn't have those kind of things here, and it took a little while before those allergens, the allergens that are native to Colorado and such, began to cause me problems. Now, one thing that I have been doing this year, and I've got to say, fingers crossed, I really do think I feel better this year than I did, say, for example, last year, is I started in probably February taking a spoonful of honey from a local Colorado beekeeper. Actually, he's a colleague of mine at work. He raises honeybees, and so each year he sells his honey crop, and so he sells them in mason jar size containers. And so usually the honey comes available in the late fall time frame, just kind of before winter, before the cold weather starts to set in. And he will harvest the honey and accumulate it and pour it up into mason jars. If you're not familiar with what a mason jar is, it's just a glass jar that's got a two-part lid on it. And anyway, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And I've been taking a spoonful of that. Now, somebody, I forget who it was that shared this information with me, and it might have been somebody here from the channel, might have mentioned this to me last year. And the sort of the general idea with the honey approach is that with the bees going out, obviously, these are Colorado-based bees. These are honeybees that live within the area that I live in. Okay, so these honeybees are going out and they're collecting their nectar and everything that whatever that process is, from the local flowers and plants and stuff that are within Colorado. And so obviously they produce the honey. The honey's collected, poured up into the jars, sold. I bring the honey home. I take a spoonful of honey. Again, I started this in February. I guess the general idea is that I am slowly adding to my body a spoonful at a time, a spoonful a day, kind of at a time, some of the byproduct of the allergens and everything, the plants, the flowers and whatnot that are, based here in the area. Now, whether this is going to work, I don't know. I think it sounds, to sort of think Mythbusters here, it sounds plausible that this sort of thing would work. And I might have talked about this last year. I have gone to allergists before. I've spent lots of money on going to ear, nose, and throat doctors and allergists, and I've done acupuncture, I've done everything. Well, about 5 or 6 years ago, my ENT that my wife and I share, he started a process of giving, instead of going in once a week to take an allergy shot, every day I would place 3 drops of this serum, for lack of a better description. And the serum was simply a concoction of the things that I was most allergic to, the plants and pollens and stuff that I was most allergic to, in a serum, and you just squirt it 3 drops under your tongue each day. And I did that for about 4 years, and the problem with that, it worked. I think it worked. I think I made some pretty significant progress from the point of which I started taking the drops from the time that I stopped taking the drops. I think I made pretty good progress, and the whole theory behind that is that each 90 days the serum, again, for lack of a better description, is sort of updated, and so it gets stronger and stronger, and then after a certain point, it becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. And so the whole idea is that your body is able to build up the immunities and everything that it needs to counteract those. And I think I did make really significant progress in that with that process. And I think that maybe the honey, the teaspoon of honey every day is sort of the same scenario. We'll see. We'll see how it all works out. I do my sinus. I do the sinus rinses and all that kind of stuff, and I won't go into too much detail there because depending on time of day and everything, and whether or not you might be snacking on something, I don't want to go into details with that. But it does help. It does help to do all of that, and we'll do our best to keep that from impacting you all. So just kind of looking at the weather forecast here that we've got going on, we are knocking on winter's door there. We've just got 2 game days of fall left. Oops, one of those, I hit the wrong button. One of those game days of fall is obviously looking like it's going to be a little wet. So obviously we can't cart grain, we can't transport grain or anything like that. If it is raining, we don't have the same wet crop issue that we have with harvesting, but so we just can't do it when it's raining. But once it stops raining, hang on, let me back up and get back on this again. There we go. Once it stops raining, obviously we can cart grain and everything. But what I'm sort of thinking is that maybe and look at that winter forecast. I mean, that is gorgeous. I wish I would have had that kind of winter weather back in that challenge that I did, where we had so much snow in the wintertime. But that's a good winter weather forecast. But anyway, long story short, I guess, and I'm going to start wrapping things up here because we're coming up on about 25 minutes. But I think that tomorrow, being a rainy game day there on Friday, may skip that game day. We may come back in the fall, or maybe I'll just come back with the episode in the first day of winter. I don't know. But anyway, we will be back for at least one more episode, but I'm kind of thinking that maybe it's 2. And we will sell some grain, and of course I'll do some of that off camera just so it's not so monotonous and mundane and everything. But we'll see, how we did and everything. We'll know. I'll go ahead and keep this episode going while we finish up this field, so you guys will know at the close of this episode just how many liters of soybeans we managed to get off the 3 fields. And this has just been an extraordinary gameplay with this map. The ability to plant these 3 fields and do that in wheat and barley back in the spring, harvest those in the early summer, get soybeans in the ground, and then be able to harvest these soybeans in the late fall has just been an incredible experience. I've really enjoyed what this weather geo has done for the map. Of course, I'm very appreciative to ccs101 for his wonderful talents in creating this map, and of course the opportunity to get a chance to play it in the early release stages and everything. That was very, very cool. But very cool concept to be able to do this. Now obviously I think in the real world you would probably not want to do this season after season after season, or you would alternate your fields perhaps, because obviously that's something that is done. But I don't know if you would want to every single year, or if you could even depend on every single year being able to flip your fields around and be able to plant wheat or barley or even canola. I think we could have certainly got the canola off those fields and probably still had time to put soybeans down. But I don't know if you would want to do that every single year, just because you probably, I think fields do benefit from having the opportunity to rest a little bit. I'm guessing that there's probably a lot of scientific agricultural evidence and everything that sort of proves that. And of course, most farmers will rotate their crops, so they might a field that they might have grown wheat in one year, they will probably rotate that and plant corn or soybean or something else in that field, and again, allowing the fields to rest. And then there's other things, we could grow a cover crop that would obviously be turned under for fertilization purposes, and we've done that on other maps. We sowed everything on Thornton Farm, even though we weren't planning on playing that more than one season. We did go ahead and for the purpose of the series and everything, we did go ahead and sow all of those fields in oilseed radish for the intent of using that as a fertilization step. So I don't know everything that there is to know, obviously, about rural world farming, and I think that there are channels that are managed by rural farmers. There's quite a few. There's the folks up in Wyoming that I enjoy watching. I think that there are a lot of YouTube content creators like myself that don't have any experience with real life farming that may think that they have a lot of knowledge and everything in the subject. That's great. I don't. I sort of stay within the limitations of what I know, and then of course within the limitations of what the game allows us to be able to do. So, those are very important things to sort of understand when you're watching, whether you're watching my channel or watching anyone else's virtual farming channels, is that there are limitations that restrict us from maybe doing things that ordinarily you would do in the real world, or there may be like, for example, Tazewell County, the SimStation, who created that map. It's based on the Real World farm. It's his family farm, and he mentioned very early on that as a general rule, they do not plow their fields because they have done some research. They have done a lot of hit something there. I don't know. Something is some kind of invisible invisible something or another there that's preventing me from getting that last little bit of soybean, but that's okay. We've got plenty. Anyway, he was saying that from the perspective of what the research and everything that they have done on their farm is that there's no additional value add in actually plowing the fields, in the additional amount of crops that they would get from that process versus the amount of soil erosion and everything that occurs because of plowing the fields and everything in that fashion. Now, where are you going? Why couldn't you just stay there for like 2 more seconds and empty this? Okay, he's gonna chase me around, so let me just start driving over here because he needs a good turning radius there to make his turn. But anyway, that's sort of like real world versus virtual world, and of course within the game itself we could turn off periodic plowing, which essentially negates the difference between the plow bonus versus the we're empty, versus the unplowed bonus. But I went ahead, for just the sake of everything, I went ahead and plowed those fields. We're going to send the driver home. He will go over there and take care of that. So anyway, I'm at the point here where I'm going to start my rambling as I move out of the way because I'm in his course and he's not intelligent enough to adjust his course. He's going to make me do that. So we are going to basically disconnect here from our header and try not to run into it as I had my hands off the steering wheel there, and get backed up to the header trailer there very poorly and get connected and head back to the farm as I start telling you all how much I appreciate you watching my videos, which I do. I do appreciate everybody watching the channel. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate engaging with you. Whether you have helpful tips or tricks and stuff that either I don't know or fail to remember. I think that's one of my hardest difficulty things is remembering to do everything that I know that we probably should do. But again, sometimes folks come up with some really great ideas and things that they might like to see on the channel, and I try to incorporate that kind of stuff in. I had someone recommend a sort of a storyline based on a scenario, and the only challenge with that is in order for me to really be able to come up with a fairly decent storyline, role play kind of thing, is I kind of need to know something about that in order to be able to effectively do it within a storyline kind of concept. And I think that I forget now what the nature of it was. It was a comment that came in back in February, I think, or maybe maybe even January. And of course, because I don't really know anything about that particular scenario that they had proposed, I'm like, well, I really can't role play that, because I kind of have to sort of have at least some basic knowledge of what it is that the scenario that we're talking about to really effectively be able to talk about it and everything. So I hope you all understand that. I know I'm not the best at role playing. I really struggle to stay in character. Perhaps that's just, my mind gets to thinking and my tongue starts moving and my mouth opens up, and next thing I know I'm saying things that oftentimes get me in trouble with my wife, even because I don't always think before I speak. But hey, that's something that a lot of us men suffer from, right? All right, so let's see how we've done. So 306,000 794. So 306,794 liters of soybeans, 442 liters of wheat, 183 of barley, and 164,000 liters of corn. Wow, good yield on the crops and everything. I would have to say that this is definitely a successful season, successful year of farming. And I really appreciate you guys watching my channel, as I know I've already said. And when we come back together for episode number 29, we will do some crop selling and tell some stories, swap some lies or something, and then start to get things wrapped up here. Like I said, we're at least one more, if not, maybe I'll try to squeak out 2 episodes here and make it a nice even rounded 30. I do like this John Deere combine. So anyway, I am still working on the new series that will basically essentially replace both MidTown and Tazewell. So more information will be forthcoming about that. Most likely it will not air on the channel until sometime in probably May, just because I've kind of got everything sort of planned out for April already. And so 36 minutes I've been babbling on. So again, thank you all so much for watching, folks. Take good care of yourselves and also of each other. I need to go upstairs and start cooking our Easter meal dinner stuff that we're going to be doing for Saturday night, as well as Sunday, leftovers for Sunday. So I will see you all back here for episode number 29, or see you next week for Tazewell episode number 19. And again, thanks for watching. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.